Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it is now 7:04. We'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the Watchung Borough School District's Board of Education Reorganization Meeting, January 5th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order as mentioned at 7:04 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So once again, welcome to the meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Watchung. Please be advised that this and all meetings of the board are open to the public and media, consistent with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231 laws of 1975, and that the advance notice required therein has been provided. This is a reorganization meeting of the Board of Education of the Borough of Watchung, at which formal action may be taken. This meeting is being live streamed on the district website, where a recording of the meeting also will be posted. The public will have an opportunity to be heard as shown on the agenda at points in the meeting provided for the public to address the board. Recording or photographing, other than for private personal use, requires the consent of parents and guardians whose children may be included in the image. This evening, I'd like to report on the election results of the annual school election of the Watchung Borough School District, County of Somerset, which was held on November 8th, 2022. The number of registered voters was 5,253, and the number of votes cast was 9,720. The official results of the school election for the three-year terms were the following. Ms. Phyllis Jewett, for a term of 2025, received 1361. Mr. Manuel Gonzalez, whose term goes to 2025, received 1195. Mr. Mohammed Frege, 2025, received 1,116. And Jennifer Scharf, 1,005. Mr. Kevin McDonald, 992. Mr. Joseph Barbella, 947. And write-ins totaled 30. As part of this election, there was also 2 one-year terms available, and the official results of those elections as follows. Ms. Gail O'Donnell, term of 2023, received 1,320. Mr. Peter Morales, 959. Mr. Rayhan Murad, 542. And the write-ins totaled 253. At this time, as Board Secretary of the Borough of Watchung Board of Education, I will now swear in the following members: Mr. Frege, Mr. Gonzalez, Mr. Morales, and Mrs. O'Donnell. Please rise and come over here to the podium area. Congratulations, all. And ask board members to quiet here in the podium. I'm going to ask the board members to please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
Dale P. R. O'Donnell.
Mohammed Frege. Manuel Gonzalez. Peter Morales.
Do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear.
or affirm that I will support
I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and this state, under the authority of the people. So help me God. I, please state your name.
Dale P. R. O'Donnell.
Mohammed Frege. Manuel Gonzalez. Peter Morales.
Do solemnly swear or affirm
Do solemnly swear
that I possess the qualifications prescribed
qualifications
by law by the office of member of Board of Education,
Board of Education
that I am not disqualified
disqualified
as a voter
as
pursuant to RS 19:4 4-1,
4-1,
nor disqualified due to conviction of a crime
crime
or offense
or offense
listed in New Jersey statute
listed in statute
18A:12-1,
12-1,
and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of that office according to the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations. Okay, we will now proceed to the roll call for this evening. My apologies. One moment. Mr. Bucarelli. Mr. Frege.
Present.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Present.
Ms. Harvey.
Here.
Mr. Ingracia.
Here.
Mr. Morales.
Here.
Ms. Murad.
Here.
Ms. O'Donnell.
Here.
We do have a quorum this evening. We will now move towards the nomination and election of our board president for 2023. At this time, the floor is now open to receive the nominations for the office of president of the Watchung Borough Board of Education. The procedure is where you would nominate it, then it's seconded by your fellow members, and then we take all nominations and we vote on them in that order. The floor is now open for nominations. Yes.
I would like to nominate Amber Murad for president.
All in favor?
Yes.
Second?
Second.
Any other nominations? Hearing no additional nominations, the floor is now open for a motion to close nominations. Do I have a motion to close nominations? Second?
Second.
Okay. Now we will now proceed to the voting for Ms. Mora, sorry, for President of the Board of Education. Mr. Frage,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
No.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Morales,
Yes.
Mr. Murad, excuse me, Ms. Murad.
Yes.
My apologies. I'm all getting to know you folks. Ms. O'Donnell,
Yes.
motion passes. Congratulations. Come on up here. So we're going to ask our newly elected president to now take over the running of the reorganization meeting. Ms. Murad, if you have any questions during the process, I'm here to help. It's your seat right here. I'm just over there, and any questions, please feel free to ask, okay? We always take some setting up here. So Board President, we'll now proceed to the election of Vice President. So what we usually do is we accept nominations and we move on from there.
The floor is now open to receive nominations for the office of Vice President of the Watchung Board of Education.
I move to nominate Anthony Ingracia.
Second.
Hearing no additional nominations, the floor is now open for a motion to close the nominations.
Second.
Is there a second?
Well, we need to first. it,
Or
so-
motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
motion here, second.
Second.
And so now the vote for the office of vice president and
Okay,
Do you wanna
so we
do the
have a
roll call?
motion, we have a motion on the floor, right?
yes.
So now we're going to do a roll call for Vice President of the Board of
The-
Education for Watchung Borough, and as Board Secretary, I take that roll call,
Right.
okay?
Yeah. close nomination.
We need we need a motion to close.
I move that nomination to be closed. Can I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, now we move
Roll
to
call.
roll call for Vice President. Mr. Frage,
Sorry.
for Vice President,
Ed-
I'm sorry?
Anthony,
Yeah,
yes.
this is for Mr. Ingracia for Vice President.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
No.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Morales,
Yes.
Ms. Murad,
Yes.
and Ms. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Motion passes. Congratulations. So, Mr. Ingracia, we're going to ask you to come. Take your seat up here. Congratulations.
I would like to move the fifth item, which is board member ethics training by Gwen Thornton. Now we'll be hearing from Mrs. Thornton. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Congratulations to all of the new board members. Welcome to your new officers. Congratulations. I'm Gwen Thornton from New Jersey School Boards Association. We are your professional association that provide direct services to boards all across the state. I currently cover Somerset and Hunterdon County. I've been doing this work for more years than you really want to know. But I was also a board member for a decade in another district in Somerset County, and I've been a resident of the county for a number of years as well. So my goal this evening, is to talk about the Code of Ethics. And so I am here to do that presentation. It fulfills the requirement for the boards of education under New Jersey CUSAC, which is New Jersey Quality Single Accountability Continuum, which is the monitoring system that the state has for school districts. And it requires annual ethics training. And we can skip to the next slide, please, and go one more, please. Okay. The ethics code really is the minimum of expected behavior of board officials. You have the honor and pleasure of serving all of your community, all of the students and all of the citizens. And so it is really to ensure that all board members uphold a standard of conduct that is expected and outlined in code and statute, as well as regulation. So next slide, it is essential that the conduct engender respect and the confidence of your citizenry, and to ensure that you not only avoid actual conduct that could possibly be seen as a violation of the Code of Ethics, but also the perception that there could be a potential violation of the Code of Ethics. Next slide, please. So the provisions apply to all school officials, and they're around conflicts of interest, the financial disclosure forms that you now are required to fill out. We'll talk about that. The Code of Ethics itself. And then also the state of New Jersey requires Board of Education members to attend mandatory trainings in years 1, 2, and 3 of your first term of service, and then in the first year of any term subsequent to your first. I will tell you that the state of New Jersey leads the nation in having well-educated Board of Education members, which is something that you should feel very proud of. And again, these apply to all school board members as well as school leaders, and it applies actually to all staff of NJSBA. We abide by the Code of Ethics. We fill out financial disclosure forms the same way that you do. And so it is something that I have been doing for more than 2 decades. And now you can do it electronically. So it's a lot easier than it used to be in hard copy. Next slide. So the School Ethics Act was created, and it created the School Ethics Commission, generally called the SEC. That's the abbreviation. I thought when I moved to the state of New Jersey, became a board member, it was the Securities Exchange Commission. And lo and behold, I found out, no, it's the School Ethics Commission when you're a board member. It lays out all of those requirements. The next slide, please. And so here are the actual tenets of the code: that you will uphold and enforce all laws, rules, regulations of the State Board of Ed and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes shall be brought through only through legal and ethical procedures. You are state officials. Your authority is derived from the state. You are elected locally by your constituents in your municipality or your city. But your authority as board members is derived from the state of New Jersey. And so you took the oath of office and you have sworn to uphold all of the laws and regulations of the state of New Jersey. And that is the first tenet of the code. Next slide, please. You will make decisions in the educational welfare of all children and seek to develop and maintain public schools that meet the individual needs of all children, regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, and social standing. I think that's pretty straightforward and doesn't need a whole lot of explanation, except to say that sometimes those decisions may seem complicated, but if you always use children as your guiding force and what is good for all kids, it really becomes very easy to abide by that one. The next one is that you will confine your board action to policy making, planning, and appraisal, and you will frame policies and plans only after you have consulted with those who will be affected by them. You are by definition a policy-making body. You create policy which provides the roadmap, the framework, if you will, guideposts for your students, your staff, your community, and that is the major role that you follow, as well as oversight and appraisal, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, along with communications to your community and to one another. The next slide, please. You're to carry out your responsibilities, not to administer the schools, but to see together with your colleagues that they are well run. You will hear this from out of our mouths at every mandatory training that you attend, whether you watch it online or go in person, and that is that your role and your job is to see that the schools are well run. It is not to run the school district. You have educational professionals who are here to make those decisions, but you do make sure that you are providing oversight and ensuring that those decisions are based on the best and important needs of students. Next one. Recognizing that authority rests with the Board of Education and make no personal promises nor take any private actions that may compromise the board. Board members are board members now, from now until the time you finish your term. Your community will recognize that you're board members, but you only have authority as board members when you are seated at a duly advertised meeting of the Board of Education. So when this meeting is adjourned and you go out into your community, you have the same amount of authority as I do in your community, which is none, right? I don't live here, but that is an important concept. So your authority is limited and it is driven by working with the full board together. And individually, no one of you has any authority outside of sitting at this table and making decisions with your colleagues on the Board of Education. Okay, next slide. Refusing to surrender your independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or using the school for personal gain or the gains of friends. Board of Education elections are by design nonpartisan, and therefore there is the notion that board members will make decisions in the best interests of children, not any particular political agenda or partisan group. And partisan group could simply be, ice hockey parents or, all third grade parents or Pop Warner football parents, partisan groups of one type or another, not just politically tied. Okay. Next slide, please. I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to matters in the schools, which if disclosed would needlessly harm or injure individuals or the school district. In other matters, I will provide accurate information in concert with my colleagues to interpret the staff, the aspirations of the community for its school. Confidentiality, you will be in closed session at times, receiving information that is not available to the public, whether it's around student matters, whether it's around personnel matters, whether it's around other kinds of items. Maintaining that confidentiality until the need for confidentiality no longer exists is absolutely critical. That confidentiality means you may not discuss it with anyone beyond another board member, including your significant others. You have to keep private what is meant to be private until it's no longer required. Next. You will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration of the recommendation of the Chief Administrative Officer. You have educational professionals who are empowered to recruit and retain high-quality staff for your school district. You must carefully review those recommendations before making a decision. The board is not empowered to hire anyone without the affirmative recommendation of your Chief School Administrative Officer, which is your superintendent. Next slide. You will support and protect school personnel in the proper performance of their duties. If you have a concern around something that occurs beyond your own child's classroom teacher, which obviously you would address as a parent if you had a child in a classroom, but any other concerns you would have around staff, you would contact the superintendent and share it in that fashion. But you are required to support and protect them in the proper performance of their duties. So sometimes this is a little challenging for Board of Education members who maybe not in a K-8 district, but I have a lot of high school districts that have 9 to 12 where, you know, parents are used to being out on the field perhaps and not being so happy with the coach or the amount of time that their child is getting playing, and they may have some comments about that. You can no longer do that on the sidelines of a sporting event. That can't happen because as a Board of Education member. Okay. Next slide. You will refer all complaints to your Chief Administrative Officer and act on complaints at public meetings only after the failure of an administrative solution. So if there is an issue that comes up for you as a Board of Education member or something is brought to your attention, your best course of action is to give the community member or the parent or whoever is reaching out to you the chain of command, and whoever is closest to the issue should be the one that you guide that person to. So let's say, for example, if you had a busing concern, and I know buses are not a big deal here in Watchung, but if you did, you would reach out, have that parent call the transportation office. You can't solve their busing concern, you know, that the bus stop should be 2 feet closer this way or 3 houses up that way. That's not your job. That's the day-to-day administration of the district. But what you can do is help parents know who to call and where to get access to get assistance from someone who might be able to address their concern or their problem. Okay, so you don't want to involve yourself in those issues. Okay, next slide, please. So the SEC, the School Ethics Commission, is made up of 9 members. They're appointed by the governor. They serve at his or her pleasure. There are 2 superintendents, 2 Board of Education members, and 5 citizens that sit on the SEC. They meet monthly, and they hear complaints or against board members that have been filed. The commissioner then, the SEC recommends to the Commissioner of Education the disposition of those kinds of complaints against Board of Education members. And I'm going to give you all a copy of this PowerPoint so that you'll have it along with some other reference material when I'm finished speaking tonight, so that if you can't see the PowerPoint, you'll be able to peruse it at your leisure and read these cases in their totality on the slides. I'm not going to take the time to do that tonight because I know you have a full agenda. And I'm going to move on from here, but that is how the process works. The SEC recommends to the commissioner identifies and certifies whatever penalty the SEC determines is the best course of action if there is a complaint that is held to be valid. Next slide, please. And again, you know, all of these have to do with board members involving themselves in matters that they ought not to typically. Next slide, please. So The next piece beyond the code itself is around conflict of interests. So you must recuse yourself if there are items that come before the board or members of your immediate family. And we'll talk about what that definition of immediate family is. If you have a business or professional activity that could potentially be in conflict, you cannot use your position to secure unwarranted privileges, advantages, or employment. The code and the nepotism policies that every district has in place actually prevents any family member of a board member from being employed in a school district once you become a board member. If they're already employed when you become a board member in the district where you serve, they are grandfathered, but you may not then participate in voting in anything that has to do with terms and conditions of their employment, and you must recuse yourself to avoid a conflict of interest. Any kind of financial involvement that might impair your objectivity, you should recuse yourself. You may not take any gift or favor that is offered with the intent to influence you. Other considerations, you should not represent any person or party other than the board in a matter before the board itself. Sometimes, there were instances where you might be supportive of a parent who has a concern when you were just a parent. And not that there's anything, I'm a parent, I'm a grandparent, but when you become a board member, that then puts you into a different kind of role. And so you cannot advocate for another parent before the board, okay? And make sure that if you're not clear that there's a potential conflict, the sort of measurement is, would my child or would I or someone in my immediate family have an advantage that would not accrue or be available to anyone else? So the question we're typically asked is, I have a third grader, they're taking a field trip, can I vote to approve that field trip? And the answer is yes, because all third graders are going on the field trip. Your child's not going to enjoy a benefit that is greater than what every other third grader in the school district is having. It would be if you ask for special treatment of your particular child or another person within your community, that it could be a potential conflict. So if you need to recuse yourself, that means you should not be involved in the discussion of the issue, nor should you vote either. Okay, next slide. What is an immediate family member? Under the current definition, it's a spouse or an dependent child that resides in the same household. Currently, the School Ethics Commission, the State Department of Education, and the SEC are revising the regulations, and they are going to expand that definition very shortly in a couple of months so that it will include your spouse, civil union partner, domestic partner, or a dependent child residing in the same household. So they're expanding that definition, making it broader than it currently is, okay? A dependent child is any child that can be claimed on your income tax, because we always get questions around perhaps people who have split households. And so whoever gets to take the child as the dependent on the tax return, you would be considered then a dependent child. If you don't get to claim that child, it's not a dependent child. A relative is your spouse, natural or adopted child, parent, or sibling. And again, they are going to expand that to include spouse, civil union, domestic partner, parent, child, sibling, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, grandparent, grandchild, son, daughter-in-laws, step-parents, stepchildren, half-brothers and sisters of the individuals or the individual spouse. And so they are expanding that greatly. Those definitions are the definitions that currently exist in your nepotism policy. And so they are just making the ethics law agree with the nepotism law so that it's very, very clear to folks. So conflicts of interest would have the same definitions as other kinds of issues under the Code of Ethics. Next slide, please. You may not hire the relative of a board member or a chief school administrator. There may be some certain exceptions, but those exceptions would have to be approved on an individual basis by the executive county superintendent. For those of you who are new to this, in every one of the 21 counties, The State Department of Education has an office that oversees education in the county. There are 21 county executive offices. Some executive superintendents share counties now. There used to be 21 of those folks. There are fewer now. They share counties. But they would have to approve hiring a board member's family member to be employed in a district where you were a board member. And it would take extraordinary circumstances, as in you were duly certified in Chinese and physics AP. In other words, not an elementary school teacher or another kind of certificate that's available. It would only be if you could not find someone to take that position. So it would be very unusual, okay? If you have a relative already employed in the district, it conflicts you out of participating in a number of items. You may not take or participate in any way in the evaluation of the superintendent, terms and conditions of their employment. You may not take part in a search if you needed to look for a new superintendent. And so those are things, if you do have a family member, that's something you can review with your board attorney to make sure that there's not a conflict that would limit your participation. And so that's an important piece to keep in mind as well. Next slide. When it comes to collective bargaining, you have bargaining agreements with your teachers. In some districts, there are administrative bargaining units as well. And so you have to look at their relationships, not just yours, but also your family members' relationships. So if you have someone, for example, that works in the district, whether it's your spouse, dependent child, they work in the district, you cannot participate in negotiations to set the terms and conditions of any contracted bargaining unit, and you can't vote to ratify. If you have a relative who works, again, out of district, but in education, in another school district, again, if it's yourself, your spouse, or your dependent child, you can't negotiate here in Watchung. You can't participate in negotiations, but you can vote to ratify the contract ultimately. All of these are laid out for you. You'll be able to look at it to see. But again, if you have any questions, or if you have family members that are employed and belong to NJEA or AFT, American Federation of Teachers, or other kinds of unions, because this applies to many similar statewide unions, whether you have a conflict in collective bargaining. The next slide, please. So again, other possible conflicts, if you have immediate family members that have heightened union activity in another district, meaning they're the building rep, they're sitting on a negotiations team in another school district, or they're an officer of their association in another school district, that would be limiting. So we always advise you, if you have that situation, to discuss it with your board attorney to clarify, to make sure that you don't accidentally overstep. Okay, next slide, please. Again, there are commissioner decisions around participation in these negotiated and bargaining agreements. I will let you read them when you get the PowerPoint. It's impossible for you to read at this length of distance. Next slide. And the next slide. Okay. In addition to adjudicating ethics complaints against Board of Education members, the SEC will also issue advisory opinions. If you think you have a potential conflict and it's on a prospective basis, and you would like to get clarification to make sure that it's not a problem, you can request an advisory opinion from the School Ethics Commission. You simply put together a letter outlining the information, what you think the potential conflict may be, and asking them whether it is indeed a conflict or not. They will get back to you within a reasonable amount of time so that you will know whether you can participate or you can't. Okay. So that's a really nice piece. I have a board member who is employed by a vendor, but works in the school district where she's going to be a board member. So we don't have clarification around that yet. They're getting an advisory opinion so that it won't necessarily, so that it's clear whether this person is going to have things that she or he need to recuse themselves from. So there's a real benefit by being able to figure that out. Next slide. We've included in the packet all of the advisory opinions from 2021 that were released in 2022. The only time the School Ethics Commission makes an advisory opinion public, they remove everyone's name. If they think it has widespread application across the state to many board members, they will make their advisory opinion public. There is an expectation that board members will be aware of advisory opinions. We publish electronically something called School Board Notes every week. We always have all of the updates on anything that's been released by the School Ethics Commission there for you as a board member to be able to read it so that you can stay up to date on that. Next slide, please. Again, these are all public advisory opinions around various kinds of concerns. One of those, and next slide, please, is around board member volunteering, and I'll talk about that in a minute. What training is mandatory? I talked a little bit about this, but in year one, we call it Gov1. You may also hear staff members refer to it as new board member orientation. It is not the same thing as coming into the district for orientation. This is something that we run. It is offered in various evenings, Saturdays. There's 2 weekends coming up where we offer this training. It is at no cost to the board member. That is a wonderful opportunity to meet new board members from across the state if you have time to do that. It doesn't cost the district any money, and it is a wonderful program. People remember that program. I will tell you, for years and years after it happens, you will make contacts with other board members, not just from Somerset County, but from all across the state. And it's very helpful. In year two, you take Gov2, which is around finance and labor relations. In year 3 of your first term, it's around curriculum and instruction, teaching and learning, student assessment, all about the curriculum. And then Gov4, again, that's for the first year of any subsequent term, and that's around legal updates, changes to the law, changes to the code of ethics, anything that has really happened that was significant in this and impacts in law, by law, education in New Jersey. We provide it both in person, live, virtual, so you can do it in the comfort of your home. That was one of the wonderful outcomes to COVID, which was unanticipated, but we found people loved it a lot because they could do it in their bunny slippers and sweatsuits. And it allows you to do it from home. And there's also a self-paced online course that's available as well. Okay. So again, doing those as soon as you can after being elected and appointed to your board is very helpful because it will give you a much broader perspective on all of the things around boardsmanship that are so critically important. Next slide. I mentioned your financial disclosure statements. You must file them within 30 days from tonight. You will be sent an email electronically, and it just asks you to disclose the sources of where you receive revenue, not the dollar amounts or anything like that. And you just simply attest to it and send it back online to the state. Those documents are accessible, and any member of the public can go on and see that once they're all filed. Okay. If you're a returning school board member and you've been here, you have until April the 30th. That's the deadline that you have to complete your financial disclosure statements. Next slide, please. I've already mentioned this. Who enforces it? The School Ethics Commission. And again, 5 citizens, 2 board members, 2 school administrators. The next slide, please. Their jurisdiction, again, they hear complaints, they issue advisory opinions. They will make it public if it has widespread application. And they will act upon any complaint that is filed by anyone against a Board of Education member. So to give you some sense, there were 85 ethics complaints filed this year, in the 2021 to 2022 year, now that we're in a new year, and there were 35 advisory opinions that were requested. So they do manage to stay busy on a monthly basis. I would like to see those numbers be 0 and 0. I don't mind the advisories because that's helpful, but the rest we could like to see that go down to 0. Next slide, please. So filing considerations, again, the SEC will look at all of the facts that are engaged in a complaint, and in the light that is most favorable to the complainant. Complainant has pled sufficient facts, which, if could be true, could support a finding. The respondent, they'll find you in violation. Okay. Again, they ask that we remind all of you that the commission is not a medium for vendettas, quarrels, grudges, and sour grapes. They have spent a lot of time in the last several years adjudicating social media concerns and issues that didn't exist when I was a Board of Education member, but now have become fairly pervasive. And so they really want to hear actual complaints, not settling grudges against each other for issues that are not appropriate for the School Ethics Commission. Next slide. So how do they adjudicate this? They have the authority to reprimand a board member, which is simply a written notice that you are being reprimanded. They can censure you, which includes reading at a public Board of Education meeting, the censure, and has to be posted for 30 days. They can suspend you from your position for a set period of time, and they can remove you from a Board of Education. They have done all of those things at one time or another. The SEC makes a recommendation to the commissioner, and if you decide as a Board of Education member to appeal the decision of the commissioner, you would appeal it to the appellate division in the state of New Jersey in the court system. Next slide, please. So there is a penalty process for those folks who do not complete the mandatory training within the required timeline. So we are listed in the law as having to notify you if that takes place. You'll get a letter from us as well as from them saying you're out of compliance. So please don't let that happen. Please make sure that you do your training, because they will either censure, suspend, or remove you for failure to complete your training in a timely manner. And again, that's not us making those decisions. We just report the training records to the School Ethics Commission, and they make those decisions. So we will oftentimes call and remind you, but you should be keeping track of that. Next slide. Okay. One of the concerns we've had in recent years is there have been a number of decisions around volunteering in schools. You certainly can volunteer in the schools depending upon your degree of involvement, as well as your degree of authority. So to the degree that you are seen as being embedded in the school, that's problematic. If you are directing staff and or students, that's problematic. These didn't exist when I was a Board of Education member. You should not be handling district money. I used to run the school store when my kids were in elementary school 100 years ago. There were quarters and dimes and nickels. It was not a lot of money, but today that would be a problem. So do not handle money. It's just a way of avoiding any particular problem. Again, if you have any questions about this, check with your board attorney. Always advise the superintendent if you'll be in the school. That doesn't mean you can't be a classroom parent. It doesn't mean you can't volunteer at field day. It does mean you can't be a volunteer coach for the district. It does mean you can't be an advisor to a program or an after-school club or activity on a regular basis. You can't do that. It has nothing to do with park and recreation teams or Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts, which are separate entities, or anything that is outside the realm of the school. This only speaks to the things within the school district, okay? And again, if you're not handling district money, if it's a one-shot, you're chaperoning one field trip, and that's perfectly fine. But you don't want to be embedded in the district, and you don't want to be directing students or staff. Next slide, please. Interviewing board members' involvement in interviews for positions other than the superintendent is not encouraged. And should your superintendent decide he would like to have stakeholders involved in that process, it can be up to 2 board members, but those members are only there for observation, okay? Not participation. Next slide. Okay, social media. Everyone has First Amendment rights. You do. You don't sign them all away as a Board of Education member. However, that being said, it is bounded by law and statute and by the school board member code of ethics. Okay, so you need to consider whether a reasonable member of the public could perceive that what you were sharing on social media would be speaking on behalf of the board and or impacting the environment within the school district itself. Next slide. They have suggested very strenuously, and I would tell you that anything that you wish to post, which I would encourage you not to, but if you so choose to, you should use the following disclaimer. The following statements are made in my capacity as a private citizen and not my capacity as a board member. These statements are also not representative of the Board of Education. Its individual members and solely represent my own personal opinion. That is the disclaimer that they have said you must use. So if you feel compelled to post, you must include that disclaimer in your post on whatever platform you happen to be posting. I guess in Twitter, that's more than 180 characters. We're out of luck. But other than that, maybe he'll change it anyway. Who knows? But in any case, you just need to be very, very careful about what you post, because they have also said that just using a disclaimer does not mean that the content is not violative of the code of ethics. So what you say in your post matters as much as including the disclaimer. Do not discuss district business online. You should do it publicly. There's an Open Public Meetings Act. That act says that the public has a right to hear, observe, and comment on district business. That is why you're sitting here. That's why you have an audience. They will probably comment, maybe not, but if they do, that is why we have that law. If you are discussing district business online or on a closed Facebook group or even on an open Facebook group, you are in some way avoiding the Open Public Meetings Act. So while it may not be violative in terms of case law that we have in existence, it is likely that it would be a violation. So our goal is always to protect you and to protect the district. Next slide. So again, content matters, and the SEC will sanction derogatory speech. The voting members of the public have the power to choose who they feel is most fit to serve. Obviously, they speak through the ballot box, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you're not exposing the board nor taking any personal action that would compromise the board, because that is in the code of ethics. Okay, next slide. So again, we recommend that you develop a list of members and administrators who might have potential conflicts. Keep that up to date so that someone doesn't accidentally overstep. Consult with your board attorney if you have questions. And again, continue to check on school board notes for updates around the latest decisions from the School Ethics Commission. You can also access those decisions, both the complaints as well as the advisories, at the DOE website /School Ethics Commission. I like reading them. You probably will think it's like watching wallpaper dry, but it is interesting if you've been a school board member to read that information. Questions that I can answer for you. I have done this rather quickly and I acknowledge that, but I know you have a full agenda and you want to get down to work. So I don't want to take an inordinate amount of time. I spend my days talking to Board of Education members, answering questions. If I don't have an answer for a question that you have, I will get you the person in the association that does have the answer. Your conversations with me are confidential. I don't share them with other board members. I don't share them with the administration, especially for new folks. Sometimes you might have questions and you think I should know the answer to this, but I don't. You are always free to call me, to email me. I will always get back to Board of Education members with an answer. You might not like my answer, but I will give you the very best answer that I can, that is factual and based on 30 years of experience as a board member and as a staff member of New Jersey School Boards Association. I hope you enjoy your board service as much as I truly enjoyed mine. I learned lots. And someday when I retire, I might run for a Board of Education again, a busman's holiday, because I liked it that much. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I will leave the packets with your business administrator, who will get them to you at the conclusion of your meeting. Thank you.
Thank you,
Gwen.
Alicia, I had a quick question for the reorganization items. For number one, I would like for us to read it out loud individually. So I guess I'll make that motion, right? Or open.
I don't think as
Can-
board president, I don't think. we
So,
need to
I
vote
mean,
on that.
ask
think
someone.
That's your prerogative as board president.
Okay, so.
So what we can do is we can go around and perhaps start in order.
Okay.
For board members only.
Yes. Peter, can you please start with the item number one for the Board of Education Code of Ethics?
Okay, number one, I will uphold and enforce all laws, state board rules and regulations, and court orders pertaining to schools. Desired changes should be brought only through legal and ethical procedures.
I will make decisions in terms of educational welfare of the children and will speak to develop and maintain the public schools which meet the individual's needs of children regardless of their ability, race, creed, sex, or social standing.
I will confine my board action to policymaking, planning, and appraisal, and I will help to frame policy and plans only after the board has consulted those who will be affected by them.
I will carry out my responsibility not to administer the schools, but together with my fellow board members to see that they are well run.
I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action which may compromise the board.
I will refuse to surrender my independent judgment to special interest or partisan political groups, or to use the schools for personal gain or for the gain of friends.
I will hold confidential all matters pertaining to the schools, which, if disclosed, would needlessly injure individuals or the schools. But in all other matters, I will provide accurate information and, in concert with my fellow board members, interpret to the staff the aspirations of the community for its schools.
I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel available after consideration and recommendation of the superintendent.
I will support and protect school personnel in proper performance of their duties.
I will refer all complaints to the chief administrative officer and will act on such complaints at public meetings only after failure of an administrative solution.
Thank you. Anthony, can you please move items 2 through 35?
So, or a
Oh,
point of order,
right.
usually what we do is we just ask for motions.
Okay.
We don't ask someone specifically to motion. So at this point in the meeting, what you would do is you would ask for motions to move
So-
items 1 through 31,
One,
excuse
you
me,
already did.
35.
I would like to make a motion. I would request a motion to move items 1 through 35.
Sure. I move reorganization action items 1 through 35.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I would like to make a motion to refer to committee. I move to refer item 28, appointment of professional service providers, to the operations committee for review and discussion, and charge the committee with reporting back to the board with their recommendations for the next board meeting.
Mr. Gracie, what item number is that?
28, item 28, appointment of professional services providers.
Okay, usually before we have a motion on the floor, we have a second and then a discussion on that particular item. So usually when a motion is made, we ask for a second. If there is no second, then that item is not discussed. If there's a second, then we have an open discussion on that particular item. So you made a motion to have a discussion on that item. Is that the board president now would ask for a second?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so what we would now have would be a discussion on that particular item.
Any discussions?
Sure. What is it that you're looking for?
The purpose of my motion was that we do have 4 and soon to be 5 new board members joining the board. And I thought that in addition to that, there's not a long time frame between now and the next board meeting. So it would be very reasonable to refer those the appointment of the professional service providers to the operations committee for discussion and review, and then address it at the next meeting.
So I believe our next meeting is the 18th or 19th, 24th. So essentially, if this motion were to pass, we would not be, as a board, be able to do any business with these service providers until such time. So
How would that?
That's a good point, because
Mr.
we
Alexis,
have-
how would that affect the
attorney.
school district?
yeah, we have the attorney, we have Dr. Frank, the district auditor and the architect.
Okay,
So
so
is there a more specific?
my understanding is that in previous meetings, all of these services were provided by bidding and went through the proper process of vetting for these particular service providers.
Well, there's just 4 in item 28. And so that's why I think it's a fairly short list and clear what items would be discussed within
so-
the operations committee.
So at this point in the meeting, there are 2 options. Since we have a motion on the floor, you can actually table that item and bring it back into committee and vote on it on the 28th, with the caveat that we may do as a board no business with our district auditor, our board attorney, our medical inspector, our school physician, and our architect. My understanding is your board just approved a referendum, correct? So we are unable to do any, in that space, we would be unable to do any work with our architect until it comes through committee and it's approved at a future meeting. I just want the board to be aware of that.
What about item number 29, which says continue current contracts? We don't have current contracts with these
So
providers?
we do have contracts, but for purposes of a reorganization and meeting, contracts are separate from your service providers. We do have contracts with these individuals.
And under those contracts, we couldn't proceed working with them until the committee meeting?
Well, if we look at item 29, item 29 speaks specifically to tuition contracts. Professional contracts currently in force are reaffirmed for the respective terms of agreement. So professional, this is professional contracts. We do have contracts with those auditors, with those individuals.
So
I
we
see
would
your
be able to
point.
continue to work with them.
yes.
I think we need to. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
it's fine to,
that's-
what if we
So we
Table
tabled
it.
it.
and then
So,
take a
yeah, so I think.
vote to the
I think that's
24th?
fair. So we continue operating under the auspices of item 29 with the idea that item 28 is tabled and brought back to the board at the next board meeting.
Yes.
So that's the motion on the floor. We'll have to get a vote to table item number 28.
Could you just clarify when you said, yes, we do have contract, what contracts? And do we have under item 29 other than insurance, tuition contracts?
Well, we have contracts with our district auditor, Ms. Savachi.
Right.
We have contracts with our board attorney. We have contracts with medical inspector and school physician. We have contracts with our architect.
Right.
So the recommendation from Mr. Morales is to work under the auspices of item 29 until such time as we can bring items 28 to the full Finance and Operations Committee.
Right. So it includes some from item 28 and also additional items, contracts in 29.
If you table
Looks like that.
28, you're only tabling your auditor, your attorney, your school physician, and your architect. All other contracts remain in place.
And we do have the auditor scheduled to present the
Yeah.
audit to the board on the 24th. We were hoping to do that, so.
But to
I
Mr.
don't know that-
Morales' point, we can operate under number 29.
To
Okay.
have the auditor come up.
Yeah.
Okay. That's,
Is there any further discussion on, we have a motion on the floor to table item 28. Is there any additional discussion on that item? Anyone else want to
Do you see any difference between the motion to refer to committee versus a motion to table? Does the motion need to be represented?
Well, you as a board have to vote on it eventually. And
Right.
your next meeting, in my understanding, is the 18th. So you
24th.
can't act on that item until that time.
Right.
You cannot, in other words, a public entity is prohibited from voting in committee.
Sure. No, I just meant that I had brought this motion as a referred to the committee, item 28, and you're saying table. So I just wanted to make sure you didn't need a new motion or anything like that to be made then.
You do need a motion to table an item on an agenda, yes.
Can we-
And that motion is now on the floor and we're discussing it.
Okay.
Excuse me, the board is discussing it.
So now discussion and there's none.
So-
So can we have a roll call?
So we want to
Right.
make sure discussion's complete.
Right.
Right. So the motion on the floor is to table item 28. So I'll do a roll call on that.
So I just have a question. I want to make sure that you're saying that we're still able to work with the auditor or attorney, the medical inspector, school physician, and the architect while we're waiting until our next meeting on the 24th.
That is my understanding, because they're currently under contract with us.
So then I don't understand what's the point of tabling it. It can be discussed in committee anyway. I mean, it could be voted on right
Fine.
now, and then it could still be brought into committee to be discussed.
Yes, it could. You are
I,
correct.
I would prefer that only because I don't want to have limitations on being able to have access to Dr. Frank and dealing with student issues and our board attorney, if something comes up, we use them infrequently, but when something comes up, I need to have access to them to make sure that we're in compliance with certain issues. And
And
that
these,
the
my understanding,
auditors-
Mr. Alexis, these are individuals you've worked with for years, correct?
Correct.
That know
Correct,
our community and our board.
correct.
Right. And you're
All
saying
of
we
them.
would still be able to work with them?
Technically, the contracts go from reorg to reorg. So this evening's reorg would implement the new contract cycle. So
Right. And that's what I think the operations committee should review and discuss is that
Those
annual
contracts.
review. So again, my motion was limited to the 4 providers in item 28.
Well, I just want to make sure that our superintendent is saying that he'd prefer for us to just vote on this so that he can continue to do business with these 4 entities. And that it could still be brought into committee for the operations committee to discuss.
correct.
Okay?
Can I just make a mention, with 4 new board members, the 5th on the 24th? We don't know too much about the people that are here. I assume they've been with you for 3 years,
I think longer, but yeah,
longer than that.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
the board attorney's been with us for three years. The others, I think, have been here longer. They all precede me.
So regarding the medical inspector, the school physician, I assume he's board certified. These are things that we need to know as, when we make this vote.
Whether he's board certified, I'm not sure what you mean.
Board certified, he's passed
As
all
a
the
physician,
state
yes.
mandated.
And yeah, and he's been the district physician for, I don't know exactly how many years, but I would say it's got to be more than 5 to 10 years.
There's also a clause in the contracts too, that, you have X amount of days to cancel a contract. So, there's no harm in voting on it this evening and then
Right.
bringing those contracts into committee and then
Well, in fact,
deciding not to move forward with them.
Yeah,
That's the
well, one
board's
example is
prerogative.
with the board attorney, there's not even it's upon notice. It's not a specific number of days as far as the notice goes. So all of these could be canceled. I have to say, I have to add, I don't believe that there is a current contract with the architect. And if, that would have to be approved by the board going forward, most likely at the end of January. So it doesn't really affect that. And the other three, we need to have access to them. So I just would prefer that we do not do something tonight that's going to limit our access if in fact the motion to table
And it can still be,
affects us
and
adversely.
it can still be brought into committee for discussion.
Correct.
So we do have a motion on the floor. So I'm going to take a roll call for the tabling of, the motion was for a tabling of item number 28. Mr. Frage,
Could you come back to me?
sure. I just, so the public knows,
Yeah.
I go in alphabetical order. It's no.
Sorry.
So I'm getting the sense that this is something that we probably, before we go to vote, should really have a little bit more of a conversation on,
Yes,
because
please.
we have 5 new board members this evening, and we just want to be clear on what the consequences of tabling this item are. So I'm just here to to record the vote. I'm not here to facilitate the discussion. That's the board president's role. So my recommendation, for what it's worth, is to have the board president facilitate further conversation, because it appears as if we have new members on the board and they're not quite sure what exactly they're being asked to vote on.
And would it be helpful to amend the motion to remove the medical inspector school physician from the tabling?
If that's your concern, understand you have a motion now on the floor to table the entire item. So what we'd have to do is vote no to table the entire item, and then
Right.
come back, make a motion to exclude that one portion of the item, if
It
that's,
just seems that I was
if that's
hearing
what the concern is.
that we could table 28 and then yet continue working as we need to under 29. And then somewhere in the discussion, it's changed that now we won't have access to those people. So I'm not sure.
Because technically,
what the
sir,
advice that would-
they go from reorg to reorg.
Right.
That's why I'm
Right.
hesitant.
And in our board packet for the board attorney, we have a contract that would be ready to sign basically upon approval in this meeting, of which we have new board members who haven't had access to that. And so that's when we say we're just approving, we'll have a signature on a year-long contract based on something that was not reviewed or discussed by a large, part of the board.
So that's,
So that's
that's
why
the
I was
board has to have
making
that.
that.
But it also can be terminated upon notice. There's no provision for 30 or 60 days. So
And that applies to all of them.
no, I'm talking about the attorney's contract that Anthony referenced.
Right, but who's had a chance to look at that so far?
The existing board members and, well, also, I do want to point out, after you're sworn in, you do have an email in your school email. Are you able to access it?
We are able to access, but we haven't received any emails. Well,
Oh,
we
yeah.
received,
We
I
have-
haven't accessed my emails yet, and I just got these papers like right now.
Okay,
I got
all right.
So I think
It there should have been an email sent after the swearing in, so that it should be in that email if it counts. If it's not, I apologize.
So I should have an email on my phone now, in my personal
In
email?
no, in your school account.
Okay, and where do I
We
get those?
couldn't give you access to this, we couldn't give you access to the board packet, as we explained, until you were sworn in.
Got it.
And I only mention it now because Anthony had mentioned the documents in the folder.
If the concern about the continuing contracts go from reorg meeting to reorg meeting, for number 28, and the concern is that we lose these access to these professional service providers. This says it's an appointment for 1 year from January 1st, 2023 to December 31st. Can we amend this to appointment for 2 weeks?
It's per the terms and conditions of that particular contract. As Mr. Alexis indicated, these, a few of them are cancelable if it goes through committee and you don't want to proceed with that vendor.
Yeah, but there's still a problem that we haven't seen it.
Yes.
So it can be discussed in committee. Everyone on the board can review everything, and it just seems kind of strange for us to start off January without the auditor, the attorney, the medical inspector, school physician. Even though I believe that was the same physician when Mrs. O'Donnell was on the board during COVID. So I don't think that's changed. And the architect. So it just seems kind of odd that we would just not want to continue. And then everything could be reviewed in committee and contracts could potentially change if that's the will of the board. So I just don't understand the reasoning as to why we wouldn't proceed as normal. And then if changes need to be made, they could be. And not hindering the school district without having any of those people who are here to help support our school district. I really haven't heard a good reason other than we haven't been able to read anything, but you'll be able to read everything when you start working in committees. And changes could definitely be made. So I'm just not sure what the problem is.
Nor am I sure what the problem with 12 business days, to the next meeting is. And we could have a special meeting if we needed to. If we found that there was a hindrance, we could have our committee meetings next week and.
I believe it takes time for us to do things like that, and why, I don't understand the harm in those positions.
Right, and it sounded like under 29, there would still be some avenue to continue working with them over those 12 days.
And our superintendent is suggesting that we vote on this in favor of the school district, so.
Okay.
I'm just not sure. There's gonna be a lot of reading for everybody to do. You're gonna have a lot of time to read tons of stuff. So I'm just not sure why we wouldn't proceed as normal, and then if changes need to be made, they could be.
Is there any more
That's the
That's just
issue.
my
We don't-
opinion.
What if changes can't be made? What if the contract is solid and we can't change changes? We already appointed for an entire year 3 professional services providers and we can't get out of the contract.
Is that the
Before we
case,
can
Mr.
review it.
Alexis?
I'm concerned because we don't have any committees. You're going to have to establish the membership of each of the committees. And then if we have meetings before the next board meeting on the 24th, are we talking about going out to different service providers? So the process takes a while. We can't just say after the committee meeting that people are not comfortable with the auditor any longer, and that, what are we going to do for presenting the existing audit? What are we going to do moving forward? And if we have to engage in a search process for new professional services contracts, it's going to take a while. That's just my concern. I just think something like this
So
takes
the-
longer, and I'm not aware, like, this is the first I've heard from anyone that there was some sort of concern about these 4 service providers.
The auditor is presenting on the 24th, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We have to, well, we typically have the auditor come to present the audit so that the board can accept it and we can follow and meet the deadline set by the state.
So we have not seen the auditor's contract, and neither have we seen the other ones. So since the auditor's coming, do you think instead of just the medical inspector, just adding on the auditor to that as well? And leaving out the attorney and the architect?
I could amend that if that would be
Okay.
helpful to.
So this way they can
amend
present it
the
on the 24th.
Motion to refer 2 of the items in item 28 to the operations committee for the board attorney and for the architect.
And then if necessary, they can possibly work under 29th. All right. Is there any further discussion? Can we have a roll call?
Okay,
please?
so there's, previous to
Motion to-
that motion, there was a motion on the floor
To
to
table.
table the entire 28.
So
So
now,
if you want to start to piecemeal it out, you're going to vote no on that first motion. Then we're going to make another motion to pull certain items out if that's the wish of the board.
Okay.
Okay? So right now on the floor, we have a motion to table item 28. Roll call, Mr. Frage,
No.
Mr. Gonzalez. Ms. Harvey,
No.
Mr. Ingracia,
No.
Mr. Morales,
No.
Ms. Murad,
No.
Ms. O'Donnell.
No.
Okay, now, we can accept any additional motions if that's the wish of the board at this time.
So I move to refer two of the items in item number 28, appointment of professional services providers to the Operations Committee. Those two items would be the board attorney and the architect services.
So the motion on the floor is to pull out from item 28, district auditor and architect.
No,
No, attorney and our.
board attorney and architect to be referred to the Operations Committee
Okay, so.
for
this-
review and discussion, and then with
Okay.
recommendations for the next board.
So since we have a new motion on the floor, now we can discuss pulling out board attorney and architect from item 28. So we would ask the board president to facilitate that discussion at this time.
Is there a second?
There has not been a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is any discussion?
So if we obviously don't have a contract with the architect, correct, Mr. Alexis?
That's how I understand it. The last agreement was just for the pre-referendum services.
So the attorney. I mean, are we not gonna have an attorney until everyone gets to review the attorney's contract? And we're just hoping that things are okay?
How long is the time period where we would not have access to the attorney?
We need to let them know in 30 days, or you said just that?
No, there's no notice provision.
Okay.
What Mohammed is asking is
Great.
whether, like, how much time is this going to take to resolve this?
Till now, until whenever you review the contract.
So it
And
could
then if.
theoretically be done by the next
Right,
sorry,
next meeting.
next meeting.
Yes. If we, yeah,
So we're saying from today until the 24th, our district isn't gonna have a board attorney.
Or nor an architect.
Right.
is there anything, other discussions? Can I have a roll call, please?
Okay, so just to be clear to the board and the public, the roll call now is to pull out the board attorney and the architect, bring that into committee and vote on that at a future date. Mr. Frage,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
No.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Morales,
Yes.
Ms. O'Donnell. Yes. And Ms. Murad.
Yes.
Motion passes. So the agenda will be adjusted to reflect that. Nope. Not yet. Okay, so right now we have items. I'm going to ask the board president to take a motion to pass items 1 to 35, including the amendment that we just did on item 28.
I know we're still in discussion on
We
the
are.
full
Yes,
35
we are.
items. So I would like to make one more motion to refer to committee just one portion of item number 9, adopt program and curriculum. I would like to revise that it's the item that I would like to refer to the curriculum committee is the revised comprehensive health and physical education curriculum, which was approved on September 3rd, 2022. If this requires an additional motion to revise or amend action item 9 to remove the newly revised comprehensive health and physical education curriculum from item 9 and leaving all other elements of the item, I so move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I would just say that, the motion would read something to the effect, I move to remove only the newly revised comprehensive health and physical education curriculum from item number 9 and refer to the curriculum committee for review and discussion, and charge the committee to report their findings and recommendations for approval to the board at our next meeting.
So
we're-
I have a question. That the curriculum is already
Wait.
approved. So, I mean, if we're just bringing stuff into committee to talk about it, I just don't understand the need to remove things from an item. Other than just to try to make a point that you're trying to make, I guess.
Well, it's asking again, 4, soon to be 5 new board members who weren't part of those discussions, and also given what was available to the public throughout that process, to approve in one line item. And when these curriculum were approved, they were broken out over two meetings and in separate subjects. But now we have a item number 9 here, where it's it appears to just have all curriculum in one line here. So I think that that would be the reason, kind of taking it back to the way in which it was approved, that having only impact on that one item that was approved on September 3rd, 2022, is the purpose for pulling it out in that fashion.
But this is a reorganization meeting. So if you want to discuss a specific curriculum, you have every right to do that in committee. It doesn't mean that you have to pull one specific curriculum from number 9 in order to have a discussion about it in committee. I just don't understand that.
Well, once again, I think it's only proper for people that are new to this board, and given that it is a bit of an unusual situation where you have 5 new members coming in one reorganization, I don't think there's anything wrong with pulling certain things out to refer to the committee, and that's the one that I'm making the motion for right now.
I guess I don't understand the purpose of it. Is it to specifically not withhold approval? Because the way this works is that once a year you have to adopt the curriculum. It's typically done at the reorganization meeting, and that's why we've always had it here. This is not something that we created when I started here. It's always been on the reorganization agenda, so we placed it on again. I'm fine with, once the curriculum committee is established, if there wants to be if the committee wants to discuss the comprehensive health and physical education curriculum, we can have those discussions. But I'm not sure I understand the purpose of the motion, or the reason for it, or the effect of it, quite frankly.
Well, again, we're talking about 12 business days till the next board meeting. So with committee meetings in between that time, I think it would be fair to give the new board members that opportunity.
I just want to thank you, Mr. Alexis, for your words, because I feel like you've done this for quite some time now. And like I've said to some of the new board members, it's probably in our best interest to listen to the superintendent of our schools. All your votes count at this point. So choose wisely.
So we have a motion on the floor to amend item number 9 to exclude the recently adopted health and physical education standards. Is that correct? Is that the verbiage?
Yes, the newly revised comprehensive health and physical education curriculum that was approved on September 3rd, 2022.
Is there any other further discussion? Seeing that there's no other discussion, roll call, please.
Mr. Frage,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
No.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Morales,
Yes.
Ms. O'Donnell. One abstention. And Ms. Murad,
Yes.
motion passes.
I would
I don't-
like to. is there-
So at this point now, you're going to make a motion to move items number 1 through 5, items number 1 through 35 as amended.
And I'm sorry to interrupt again. I don't have another motion to make, but I just had a question regarding item 35. I'm not sure that if we've been involved in this program before, or if it was ever presented to the Operations Committee. But there's authorize the interim business administrator to invest funds in the New Jersey Asset and Rebate Management Program, NJARM. And there's 5 resolution points after that. I was just wondering if we could get a little bit of information. I saw this brief brochure in the board packet, and there was also these 2 natural gas service inquiry form and electric service inquiry form. I don't think that was related to this, but I also don't see it elsewhere in the agenda. So I'm not sure. That may be a separate question. But just with this New Jersey ARM, is this something that someone has brought to us just recently, or is this something that, is there a new reason for us wanting to engage in this program in a different way than we have in the past?
Sure, I can speak to this program. This would be a new program for your district. It's a program that's run by the state of New Jersey that gives operating public entities the option to pretty much invest your reserves. Okay, so we as a district have emergency reserves, we have capital reserve, we have maintenance reserves. This is a state-sponsored program whereby funds can be put towards almost like purchasing a CD, if you would. It's like a rolling bank account. And you gain interest on those funds at over 4%. The interim business administrator has recommended this program and indicated that information related to this has been very successful in other districts that he has worked in. And he recommends the approval of this particular item. And he wanted me to share with the board that he would be willing and of course will bring in information related to this program at the next operations meeting.
Okay, and so this is for our existing capital reserve?
It's for your existing funds.
Okay. And do we have any other, along the lines of those contracts, do we have any other action being taken from Phoenix Advisors, or is this something that they would look at
This is
regarding?
completely between, it has nothing to do with Phoenix Advisors, sir. It's a program completely between a Board of Education and the state of New Jersey.
Okay. So I guess under that question 29, that item 29, then is Phoenix Advisors still one of those ongoing? Contracts?
Yeah, I think your board counsel or bond counsel is not usually a professional service. That's why it's not listed there.
Okay,
Phoenix Advisors, I believe, is your bond counsel,
all right. And this natural gas service
financial
inquiry
advisors. Okay.
form and
They also do bond work. So my apologies.
the electric service inquiry form and the natural gas service inquiry
Yes.
form, is that anywhere else on this agenda? Or is that?
So you currently are in a program called ACES. ACES is a program that's sponsored by the New Jersey School Boards Association. Your district has been in it for many, many, many years. Every few years, I believe it's 5 years, you have to re-up with them. And I don't want to say every school district in New Jersey, but the vast majority do join. There's no cost to the district. In fact, it's a savings. Basically, what it is where you bundle all of your school districts together and you get your energy based on a larger, like a volume discount, if you would. The information that was given to you in the packets is simply releasing Gable Associates, which is the entity that handles that particular program, giving them authorization for us to give our electric and gas usage to them so that they can determine to help determine the bundling rate.
Okay, so was that one of these items then? Is it?
32.
Yeah,
Okay,
item
32, okay. All right, well, thank you very much. I didn't see the aces on there, but I see the
And
other.
I'll ask Mr. Borgo to
Oh,
bring,
that's the last one.
I'll ask Mr. Borgo to bring additional information into the next committee meeting for you.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank you for bringing that to our attention and understanding this. So this is safe. The money is safe in this New Jersey.
So your question is referring to NJ Arm?
Yes.
Yes, it's almost like purchasing a CD, if you would.
Oh, okay. All right.
But once again, Mr. Borgo, your business administrator will be giving information, interim business administrator will be giving information at the next committee meeting on that.
Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to move items 1 through 35.
As
with-
amended.
As amended. Can I get
A roll call. Mr.
Second,
Oh, sorry, second. My apologies.
any-
Mr. Ingracia, your second?
yes.
Okay,
any-
a little fast on the uptake there. Mr. Fraze.
Sorry, what was it? I was,
Okay, so we're taking a roll call vote on items number 1 through 35 as amended.
yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Morales,
Yes.
Mrs. O'Donnell,
Yes.
and Ms. Murad.
Yes,
Motion's passed.
now we're moving.
So at this time, we don't officially have to conclude the reorg meeting. We don't have to take motions to conclude and then reopen. But I'd like to inform the public and the board that we are now transitioning to our regular meeting agenda. So at this point, we're now on page 15 of the agenda, board member comments. So the board president would facilitate. Thank you.
We're starting our regular meeting for January 5th, and we're starting with board member comments. Now I'd like to open the floor for board member comments, and I would like to go first. I'm honored to be elected as the president of the Watchung Board of Education. Thank you for entrusting me with this role. This is a responsibility I take very seriously, and I'm committed to working tirelessly to ensure that our schools are a place where every student can thrive. I want to thank Dory Harvey and Jen Scharf for their service as president and vice president over the past 2 years. I would like to extend a warm welcome to the newly elected board members as you begin your new roles. I'm excited to see all of you in action as you contribute your talents, skills, and expertise to the Watchung Board of Education. As we embark on this journey, I encourage you to stay focused on our shared mission to provide the best possible education and opportunity for our students. Serving on the board can be challenging and a demanding role, but I also know that it is deeply rewarding one. Every day we have the opportunity to make a positive difference in the lives of our students, and that is something that we should inspire and motivate us. As we begin this new chapter in our journey as a board, I encourage each and every one of us to stay focused on our mission and work together to achieve our goals. We are all in this together, and I'm confident that with hard work and dedication, we can all make a real impact on the future of our students and our community. Thank you again for the opportunity to serve as your president. I am excited to work alongside each and every one of you, and I look forward to the many challenges and successes that we will experience together.
I'd just like to say thank you, Amber, for being willing to be the school board president and for your work and service to this board and other volunteer efforts over the years as well. And just thank you to all the new board members for your willingness to volunteer. And I look forward to working with all board members, new and old. And I just appreciate the start of a new year and the opportunities that are ahead of us. Thank you.
Any other board member comments? Seeing that there are none, we're moving to the superintendent remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Murad. Good evening and happy new year, everyone. In addition to congratulating and welcoming our new board members and our new officers, I want to recognize all of our board members for their dedicated volunteer service particularly during the School Board Recognition Month, which occurs each January. I also want to extend our congratulations to our Educators of the Year, who were announced at the end of December. Carolyn Mills, who's here, our STEM and SOAR teacher at Bayberry. Kristen Heller, our reading specialist at Bayberry. Christina Franco, science teacher at Valley View, and Tricia Keene, our media specialist at Valley View. We'll do something at the end of the year to recognize everyone, but I just wanted to take a minute to make that announcement. Since our last board meeting, we've had a new teacher join our team, and I want to recognize and welcome Miss Julia Reckner at Bayberry School. We don't have our school-based reports tonight, but I just want to give a quick update on the referendum. First, thank you to everyone who took the time to vote in the December 13th special election. The community voted to pass both questions, and the county clerk has certified the results. Question 1 received 630 yes votes and 532 no votes. Question 2 received 607 yes votes and 545 no votes. We are entering the next stages of planning, which include working with the financial advisors on the sale of bonds and the architects on the design specification phase. The Operations Finance Committee will give a report at the next board meeting. The enrollment reports show 678 students, which represents 14 more than were enrolled on September 1 when we opened the school for this 2022-23 school year. We'll resume the principal's reports at the next meeting later this month on January 24th. And that's it for my brief report.
This time, we would welcome any comments from the public for agenda items only.
Yeah, you're probably best to read that.
Okay. We welcome input from the public. There are 2 times during the meeting when the public is invited to speak. The first opportunity to comment on the agenda items only is now. The second opportunity for the public comment is towards the end of the meeting. Total time allotted for the public comment is 30 minutes. Before you make your comment, please state your name and municipality of residence. In the event it appears that the public comment portion of the meeting may exceed 30 minutes, the presiding officers may limit each statement made by the participant to 3 minutes duration. Our public forums are not structured as a question and answer session, but rather are offered as an opportunity to share input with the board. In instance where the board feels a response is needed, the presiding officer or superintendent will address the comment. New Jersey statute do not permit the board to discuss personnel or hiring in public session. Names of students should not be discussed. Members of the public should consider their comments in light of legal rights of those affected and identified in their comments, and be aware that they are personally legally responsible with potential liability for comments that they make to the board. The board shall not be held liable for comments made by the members of the public. Are there any public comments?
Good evening. Happy New Year. Welcome to all the new board members. Hello to the
Excuse me,
returning.
ma'am, could you please state your name? And
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm getting to that. Welcome to all the board members and hello to the returning members. My name is Tynesha Sims. I reside at 124 Edgemont Road. I am the co-founder of the Watchung Idea Committee. It's a residents-led committee. For those that don't know, we started this committee about a couple of years ago in light of the social unrest in the world today. And we've made great strides with our Board of Education thus far. So I'm looking forward to meeting with you all, to the new people that I'll be working with or partnering with to further push our agenda, our mission, to really bring this town, really bring the schools inclusive. We're all diverse. We are growing diverse by the day. And it's gonna be good for our kids to see and to be more well-educated on all of our backgrounds, ethnicities, cultures, therefore. So I'm looking forward to meeting you all. I'm hoping that every one of you really take our kids into heart and do what's best for our schools, not delay the referendum process, so we can get those enhancements that we all voted for underway. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing that there are none.
I'm Frank Pizzignano, Jared Court. Congrats, y'all who are new, and congrats to those who continue to return. Because I think we do have, notwithstanding all the comments about 5 new board members, I do believe there are 4 returning board members, and thank you for your service. I think I'll put Tanisha for her leadership here. And Happy New Year. Happy New Year. For a student, a superintendent, a principal, a teacher, there's nothing new. School opened in September. So all that we're talking about here, the children, the teachers, they're here every day working their tail off. The superintendent, the principals, they're running the show. The board is here to oversee, is not here to run. I know you know that. I know you know that. The town voted. I think if you listen to the numbers, 20% more people voted for the referendum than not the referendum. Those people aren't paying attention to who changed here. And a cynic or a skeptic would watch the early moves of the 2 people who voted no for the referendum, who sit on the board, and the idea of taking the attorney off the table and taking the architect off the table could look like a stall tactic. So I got to tell y'all, if your oath is to do the right thing by the children, if your oath is to do the right thing by the schools, if your oath is to uphold what the voters asked for, go do it. Let the superintendent lead, and you all oversee the system. 600 plus people voted. 2 of you worked really hard to not get that vote. But I'll tell you what, this whole town will be looking at every one of you if you don't hold the vote. And the first moves that happened today, the architect and the attorney could lead one to believe that this was all a plan. So I'd ask you to get to work and help that gentleman run the system with a referendum. Or if not, you didn't do your job. You ran for office. Now live up to it. God bless you. Have a good day.
Any other comments from the public?
Hi, everyone. Phyllis Jewett at Elsinore Drive. I've been reading this governance book regarding the Board of Ed and such, and I did remember reading that we shouldn't forget the minority, the people that, you know, you have to think of all the people in town. And I know we have the majority pass the referendum, but you can't forget the others that did not do that. They had reasons also. So we have to consider them in the things that we do. We can't just go by just thinking one way. You have to think of everyone. So that's all I had to say. I remember reading that and I thought it was important.
Any other comments from the public? Seeing that there are none, I would like to move action items. Can I have a motion to move action item? Yeah, or
A1, I guess.
A1, yes. A1. Can I have a motion?
Make a motion to move administrative item A1, Board of Education Recognition Month.
Second.
Roll call, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fraze,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Morales,
Yes.
Ms. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Ms. Murad.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I'd like to make a motion to pass personnel items B1 through B3. Can I get a motion
Motion.
for
I make a motion to B1 through B4.
before? Yes.
Do we have a second?
Do I have a second? Can I have a roll call? Any discussion?
I would just like to say, it's nice to see that you brought up the substitute pay to $125 instead of 90.
Can we have a roll call, please?
And just for clarification on Mrs. O'Donnell, that move was made, I think about a year and a half ago. And it went from 100 to 125. And the reason we have this whole list here again is just that we always reproduce the entire list whenever we have a revision, and then the revision appears in bold, just so that's clear to everyone.
My last question is, are we still with a company that gives us our substitutes, or are we doing it on our own now?
We do largely all the sub work on our own.
We do. Okay.
Yeah, largely, yes.
Any other further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fraze,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia,
Yes.
Mr. Morales.
Yes.
Ms. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Ms. Murad.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Can I have a motion to move operations items C1 through C7? Right? C7.
Five.
C5, sorry, I have the old. C5, please.
Well,
Motion to move C1 through C5.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Fraze,
Yes.
Mr. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Ms. Harvey,
Yes.
Mr. Ingracia,
yes.
Mr. Morales,
Yes.
Ms. O'Donnell,
Yes.
Ms. Murad.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Seeing that there are no items for curriculum items or policy items, I move to board business. And there are none, so this is the second time that the members of the public can come up, so we're going to move to comments from the public. Are there any?
Jen Scharf, Watchung, Woodledge Road. I wasn't going to say anything because you all know where I was and where I am now, but after what Miss Jewett got up and said, that's not the way the world works. The referendum won. And those are the people that should be listened to. That is not the way the world works.
Hans Jewett, 20 Elsinore Drive. I wasn't going to get up and say anything, but just one observation, which I had. And I don't know if you can do it differently, but it didn't seem to make sense to have contracts expire as you're bringing new people on. I would suggest, if unless there's a problem, that the new board think about creating contracts that go to mid-year when the board is halfway seated. I belong to organizations that have reorganization meetings in the middle of the year so that you don't have this situation of new people coming in and not being familiar with the issues. It seems to make common sense. I don't know, maybe our attorney or so can check if there's any problem in writing contracts like that in the future. I was pleased to see the way the meeting was conducted today. And I encourage, everybody to be civil. And I think the goal is our children. Being a resident for 45 years, having seen kids go through Bayberry, having coached them on baseball fields in front of Bayberry, it was a super friendly town. The ratings of our schools were way on top. We were great. When I look at the US News and World and some of the material now, I don't see that same level. I see this group working together and can really bring us back together again. And I've just seen a little bit of sniping. I think sniping really isn't what we need to do. I think we really need to resolve that. We are going to work together as a team. True, the referendum, and I don't know why that's even a subject tonight. True, the referendum won by 20%, but the referendum only had 10%. A little over 10% of the Watchung voters approve it. So we've had 10% of Watchung voters give 90% of Watchung residents a tax increase. Now, those are the rules, and we followed the rules. And shame on those 80% of the population that didn't vote. When you don't vote, you don't get good results. You don't get good government. You just have to look around at New York City, at Chicago, at Philadelphia. When we kill 20,000 people a year in our cities, those are not good results. We don't have that in Watchung, and we should never have it in Watchung. The only thing I plead is that we really do things civilly, respect each other, and move ahead. As George said, the kids are the objective. The objective should be to get our kids to perform in relation to where our kids performed 40 years ago. And I think we can do it. I think all we got to do is work together a little bit. So appreciate it. Good luck. And appreciate all you people going through this kind of punishment. So I don't know where I'm going to be.
Any other comments? Seeing that there are none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I second.
Oh, who first did? Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Who motioned?
I make the motion to adjourn.
And I'll second that one.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.